Alright, for this video lesson, we're going to look at the two steps of factoring. You can take that down where it has steps when factoring. The first one, we want to factor out the GCF. Remember, that means greatest common factor. And what we've been working with a lot, really all of last week, we were given a quadratic trinomial, and we factored these into two binomials. So that was what we did all of last week. We're going to combine both the steps. We really work with both of these steps in isolation of each other. Now we're going to combine them. Whenever it says factoring, we always want to find a GCF first. Everything that we did last week with factoring the quadratic trinomials, there was no GCF. Now we're going to start to see some of them, there's a GCF. So let's not forget about that. Okay, I'm just going to do these first three, 1, 2, and 3, and then we'll get into something different. Number one, now if I follow the steps, if I look for a GCF, okay, I have 2x squared, 2x, and negative 84. Well, there is a common factor of 2. So the GCF is 2. So remember, I pull that out on the outside. And then the inside, I get x squared. Okay, inside I get x squared plus, and then we just have 1x. And then 2 goes into 84 42 times, so it's minus 42. So I'll put a little check mark. I factored out the GCF. Now on a factor, inside the parentheses, the x squared plus x minus 42, I want to factor that into two binomials. So I'm going to leave the 2 on the outside. I'm going to factor this into two binomials. And since I have this x squared, that means the terms in each have to be x. Since this last one's a minus, it means we're going to have mixed signs here, a plus and then a minus. So let's put plus and then minus. So I'm thinking of factors of 42 that subtract to give me 1. Well, 7 and 6 works. Or the difference of 7 and 6 is 1. 7 is the bigger number, so that's going to go with this sign, the plus. So it's going to be x plus 7, x minus 6. And then if I set the x plus 7 equal to 0, I get x to equal negative 7. If I set x minus 6 equal to 0, I get x to equal 6. Okay, let's do one more of these. I'm just going to do number 3. Now, number 3, I noticed the 4x squared by itself. I want to have that x squared to be a positive. So I'm going to move over the 60, and I want to move over the negative 8x. So I'm going to have 4x squared. And then if we add, we're going to add 8x. So add 8x, that cancels. And then I add 8x here. And then this 60 is positive, so I subtract 60 from both sides. This becomes minus 60 equals 0. So once I have it set equal to 0, then I follow the steps when factoring. So I want to factor out the GCF. Well, if I look at 4, 8, and 60, the biggest number that goes into all three of them is 4. So I'm going to pull out the 4. Then I'm going to get a quadratic trinomial on the inside. I'm going to get x squared plus 4 goes into 8 2 times, so it's 2x. And then minus 4 goes into 60 15 times. So I have it set equal to 0. So again, I have this first check mark. I factored out the GCF. I have the quadratic trinomial. Now I want to do this. I want to factor it into two binomials. So I'm going to have the 4 on the outside. And then I set up the two binomials. Set it equal to 0. Now again, since this last one's a negative, well, first I'm going to have x in each. Since the last one, this is a negative, it tells me I'm going to have a plus and a minus. So then I ask myself, what are factors of 15 that subtract to give me 2? Well, I'll write it up here, 5 and 3. So since this is a plus, the bigger number 5 is going to go with the plus. So it's going to be x plus 5, x minus 3. And then it works. So then if I set this x plus 5 equal to 0, I get x to equal negative 5. And if I set this x minus 3 to equal 0, we add 3 to both sides, so I get x to equal positive 3. So we never did that before. We either just factored out the GCF and that was it, or we just factored in two binomials. What we showed with number 1 and 3 is we did both. Always look for a GCF first, and then if you have a quadratic trinomial in the parentheses, then factor those into two binomials.